Use headphones for better experience. Close your eyes. Now imagine the one thing you're most afraid of. It just walked into the room. The air in the high Uintas doesn't just get cold, it gets heavy. It feels like the atmosphere is trying to press the breath back into your lungs. Elias knew the stories. He'd grown up on the edge of the res, hearing the whispers about the Yinald Lushi, the ones who walk on all fours. But Elias was a man of science, a field biologist tracking elk migrations, and science didn't have much room for campfire boogeymen. That changed on the fourth night of the Blackwood expedition. The uncanny silence. It started with the silence. In the mountains, quiet is a lie. There's always the skitter of a marmot, the rustle of pine needles, or the distant cry of a hawk. But at 3 a.m., the woods around Elias's nylon tent went vacuum-sealed. Then came the smell, rot and wet dog. Elias sat up, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He reached for his headlamp, but a sound stopped his hand mid-air. "Elias, help me." The voice was thin, raspy, and sounded exactly like his sister Sarah, but Sarah was 300 miles away in Salt Lake City. "Sarah?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "It's so cold, Elias. Open the flap." He gripped the zipper, his thumb trembling. But as he leaned forward, his headlamp beam caught something through the translucent mesh of the tent's upper vent. A pair of eyes. They weren't glowing like an animal's. They were flat, amber, and deeply, terrifyingly human. They were set too wide apart on a head that looked like a bleached elk skull, but the skin stretched over the bone was pulsing, as if something underneath was trying to rearrange itself. The transformation. Elias scrambled back, kicking his sleeping bag. "Get away from me!" The thing outside didn't growl. It giggled. The sound was a hideous collage of a coyote's yip and his sister's laugh. "Not Sarah?" the voice asked. It was deeper now, wet and distorted. Suddenly, the tent wall flexed inward. Long, gray fingers, too long with too many knuckles, scraped against the fabric. The sound was like dry bone on sandpaper. Elias grabbed his bear spray and his hunting knife. He knew he couldn't stay in the nylon cage. He lunged out the secondary exit, stumbling into the moonlight. He saw it then, perched on a fallen cedar. It looked like a wolf that had been broken and reassembled by someone who hated the shape of living things. It stood on its hind legs, nearly 7 feet tall, draped in a mangy, backwards-facing bear pelt. Its joints bent at impossible angles, and its fur was matted with old blood and sagebrush. It wasn't an animal. It was a man wearing a nightmare. The pursuit. Elias didn't wait. He bolted toward the trailhead, his boots thudding against the frozen earth. Behind him, he heard the sound of a heavy body hitting the ground. Thump, 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 thump. It was running on all fours, but the cadence was wrong. Irregular, like a gallop performed by a creature with uneven limbs. "Stop running, Elias!" the thing shouted, now using Elias's own voice. "We just want to talk." He didn't look back. He scrambled up a rock face, his fingers raw and bleeding. He could hear the creature below, clicking its teeth. It wasn't just hunting him for meat, it was playing. It wanted the fear. It fed on the moment the mind snapped. As he reached the ridge, Elias saw the headlights of a truck in the distance. The park ranger station. Hope flared in his chest, but as he turned to run, he slipped. He tumbled down a shallow ravine, his ankles snapping with a sickening pop. He lay in the dirt, gasping, the metallic tang of fear sharp in his mouth. The woods went silent again. Then, from the darkness of the trees just 10 feet away, a figure stepped out. It was a man, an old man in a flannel shirt looking concerned. "Son, you okay? I heard a scream." Elias exhaled, tears of relief pricking his eyes. "Thank God. There's something out there. It's following me." The old man stepped closer. The moonlight hit his face. He was smiling, but his eyes didn't move. They remained fixed, wide and unblinking. "I know," the man said. Then his jaw unhinged, dropping down to his chest, and his skin began to ripple like water. "I'm right here." The old man's face didn't just change, it disintegrated. The skin didn't tear. It flowed like hot wax, pulling away from a skull that was lengthening into something lupine and jagged. Elias tried to scream, but his throat felt like it was filled with broken glass. He scrambled backward on his elbows, his broken ankles screaming in protest as it dragged across the jagged scree. The man dropped to all fours. The flannel shirt shredded as gray, corded muscle exploded beneath the fabric. The sound was the worst part. The wet, rhythmic crunch snap of bones breaking and resetting in real time. "Help me," the creature croaked. It was still using the old man's voice, but the pitch was vibrating, layered over the low, guttural growl of a predator. The ranger station. Elias found a surge of adrenaline that defied biology. He lunged for a heavy branch, downed oak thick and knotted, and swung with everything he had. The wood connected with the creature's transforming snout with a sickening thud. The thing hissed, recoiling. It wasn't a roar of pain, it was a sound of pure, concentrated malice. Elias didn't look back. He dragged himself toward the glimmer of the ranger station's porch light less than 50 yards away. Every movement was an agony of fire in his leg, but the shadow behind him was moving again. He reached the heavy timber door and hammered on it. "Open up! Please, God, open the door!" The lock turned. A young ranger named Miller pulled Elias inside, his eyes widening at the blood and the sheer terror on Elias's face. "Jesus, man, what happened? Bear?" "Lock it," Elias gasped, collapsing onto the linoleum floor. "Lock the deadbolt, now!" Miller obeyed, sliding the heavy iron bolt just as a massive weight slammed into the door. The entire cabin shuddered. The sound wasn't a clawing, it was a systematic testing of the wood, a heavy, deliberate pressure. The siege. The station was small, one main room, a kitchenette, and a back office. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling through the pines, but through the whistle of the storm they heard it. "Miller, is that you?" Miller froze, his hand hovering over his radio. That's Captain Vance. He's out on patrol." "It's not him," Elias hissed, grabbing Miller's arm. "Don't answer. Whatever you do, don't look it in the eye if it gets in." "Miller, my truck broke down. I've got a civilian with me. Open the door, son. It's freezing out here." The voice was perfect. It had Vance's slight Texas drawl, the specific way he cleared his throat. Miller moved toward the window, his hand reaching for the blinds. "Miller, stop!" Elias yelled. But Miller peered through the slat. He went dead silent, his face drained of all color, turning a sickly, translucent white. That's not Vance," Miller whispered. Through the window, under the flickering porch light, stood Captain Vance. He was wearing the uniform, but he was standing perfectly still. Too still. His arms were 6 inches too long, the sleeves of the jacket ending mid-forearm. And where his boots should have been, the leather was split open by massive, black-taloned paws. The thing outside looked up. It didn't smile this time. It simply tilted its head 180 degrees, looking at Miller upside down. The breech. "We need the shotgun," Elias whispered, pointing to the rack behind the desk. Miller didn't move. He was mesmerized by the scratching. The thing wasn't at the door anymore. It was on the roof. Skitter-scratch, skitter-scratch. Suddenly, the power cut. The humming of the refrigerator died, and the porch light vanished, plunging them into a thick, oppressive darkness. "Elias?" Miller's voice came from the corner. "I'm here," Elias said, fumbling for his headlamp. "Elias, I'm scared," Miller said. But the voice wasn't coming from the corner anymore. It was coming from the ceiling, directly above Elias's head. Elias flicked on the light. The ceiling tiles had been pushed aside. Hanging from the rafters was the creature, its skin a patchwork of the old man, the Ranger Vance, and a hairless coyote. It hadn't fully committed to one form. It was a shifting, heaving mass of stolen identities. It dropped,